Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Unleashing DePIN Podcast. My name is Tyler. I'm your host, and I'm super excited for this next conversation that we get to have. This is a project in the DePIN space that is very near and dear to my heart. It's in the privacy sector, which I think is one of the most important applications of DePIN. So, without further ado, I'm really excited to have Neurotic and DNB Wizard from anyone on the Unleashing DePIN Podcast. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic. Pleasure to be here. I think this one was pretty long in the making, so glad we could make this happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm very excited though that we get to have a chance to chat about what you're building because I think it is incredibly important for not just DeepIn but the world in general. Maybe before we get into what you're building a little bit, we can kind of go through who you are, how you've gotten into the space, kind of how you found yourself at anyone, and we can jump into it from there.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll maybe start. I'm Neurotic, the COO of Anyone, formerly HR. I kind of have a background in traditional software and made my way into Web3, I guess, relative youngster of the group, really only in the last cycle, 3, 4 years ago. But the idea we all kind of collectively had to build something out has actually existed far longer. And that fit with Web3, with decentralization, and having seen the success of these early deepens, really pushed us towards the space as a way to build. And we have DNB here as well.
Thanks, Neurotic, and thanks for having us on the podcast. Yes, I'm DNB Wizard. I'm a long-term A-Tour, now anyone supporter. It was a fair launch and stealth launch project during the height of the bear market. Myself and a few other friends found it, and we just loved what the team was building and the community and the vibe. A bit about myself. I have a lot of professional experience in network systems, cybersecurity. I've consulted multiple blue chip companies, had Valley experience, all that sort of stuff. Been in Web3 for way too long. But really, actually, if I'm honest with you, I was so sort of fed up with the sort of state of Web3 and all these VCs dumping on retail and all the stuff that goes on. And then A Tour was born, and it just completely reignited my passion for Web3. It reignited and sparked this massive movement and community. And I am just so delighted and honored that a team is so humble and so hardworking and so professional, and they allow community members like myself and others to contribute, and we all work together for this common and completely united mission, which is promoting global privacy and fighting censorship.
I think that's a incredibly important mission, and you gotta love when there's sort of this reinvigoration within the space. I know Web3 can get a little bit between all the scams and all the, as you mentioned, projects sort of dumping on retail investors. It can get a little bit, it can get a little bit flatlined. And so it's amazing to see a project that's bringing the core tenets of what makes Web3 amazing and solving a really important problem, which is privacy and censorship resistance. I'm here for all of that. So maybe before we kind of dive into anyone and really talking about specifically how you're going about solving this problem, can you just give what was your first introduction to DePIN sort of as a category? And then where did the stars align with understanding, okay, this is an interesting model. How does this fit into kind of this decentralized VPN model that we're doing with anyone?
Yeah, sure. And that's a good question. I mean, we launched this project kind of to the public at the very beginning of 2023. And I think that was only 1 or 2 months into this term deepin really existing. So in a way, we have been a deepin project, I think, multiple months before we had ever actually heard the abbreviation. But I think it's a fantastic way of summarizing this type of project. I'm very glad actually that this concept, right, of building out systems where you take on incumbent industries in a distributed way, using a diverse community. I'm very glad that this concept is being given a label because it's really allowed this deepen category to shine, and I think inspired a lot of use cases. But in our case, I think we kind of really grew alongside this deepen term. It's, I'd say, really only at the beginning of this year that we've really integrated ourselves in this deepen ecosystem. We've had some of the deepen VCs actually come in and come on board as we've taken on a more institutional outlook. But I think really we took inspiration from projects like Helium and on a longer time frame, obviously the Tor network itself, both as really good examples of how you can inspire retail people, not necessarily extremely technical, to actually go and contribute to a network like this and create something that couldn't exist if you didn't incentivize those people. So those were kind of our inspirations, and I'm glad now it's got its own category and focus in Web3.
Yeah, it's certainly taken over quite a bit of the narrative, and it's definitely one of those applications where, you sort of see a lot of different projects trying to fit square pegs into round holes with respect to capturing the zeitgeist that's happening in the space. But I think at least with respect to anyone, I mean, you guys are through and through a true DePIN project, and it makes more than enough sense to sort of leverage that type of a model within the problem you're solving. So one of the things that I think would be helpful for folks as we're kind of diving into everything that's going on with anyone, can you just unpack for us a little bit what the actual network is, the problem it's solving, the relationship to things like Tor? Just share for those that aren't familiar with this concept of how the Anyone network works, maybe some comparisons that they might be familiar with, and then we can kind of go through the history a little bit more from there.
Sure, I can maybe start us off here. I think the anyone network fundamentally exists because internet privacy has been this big growing issue in everyone's consciousness over the past 10, 20 years. But really, the default solution that's offered to people concerned about this, the VPN, to our mind, isn't really the solution that's going to take true internet privacy and propel it to the mainstream. And that's really because of two big issues. The first is that a VPN is inherently centralized, right? You send your traffic to a VPN server, and they then have the ability to log your traffic. Very oftentimes, are obligated to, and then
Hmm.
this metadata and your traffic history ends up getting hacked, ends up getting leaked. I think a statistic came out recently that over 2 million passwords have been leaked through VPNs, and that's just in the past 12 months. So
Really?
it's yeah, I mean, it's quite crazy to think that there's sort of the traditional privacy solutions don't really solve them. They just shift the bottleneck over to another centralized entity. And the other sort of gap or opportunity in this privacy space is that right now users are told you are responsible for your own privacy. You need to set up your own privacy solution. You have to install this and run it. And really, if we want to take a forward view and make real internet privacy the default setting, it needs to be built into applications, and it needs to be on sort of without the user having to do anything or even knowing that these protections exist. And so we are trying to create this paradigm shift for privacy in general, obviously not just for Web3, but for the entire world. And the way we see to do that is very much tied in to building out a DePIN network where your internet traffic is fragmented between multiple what we call relays. We use a technology known as onion routing that was popularized by the Tor network. And we're sort of taking this technology and applying it in a far more mainstream way, building out an incentivized network that can deliver onion routing at speed, at a performance that people expect, and also integrating this technology into apps through our SDK. And hopefully, in doing so, we grow the supply and demand side to make this new level of true privacy the reality for everyone. So, in a nutshell, I guess that's our mission and a hint to kind of the things we're doing to achieve it as well.
Yeah,
And
that's super important.
and
DB Wizard, do you have anything to add?
yeah, I do, and it's always hard to follow Neurotic. He is such a amazing ambassador for anyone, and it's such a great leader. But I just want to comment and sort of take it back a step. If we look at the internet and how the internet is actually designed, it is insecure by default. And but don't take my word for it. Just look at the Edward Snowden leaks, and I know this from insider experience as an engineer who's ruled out internet providers in several jurisdictions. I would say that every major ISP in the US, their main backbone links that your traffic goes over are tapped, and that is sent and to data centers, and that is analyzed and spied on. Don't take my word for it, just Google it. In Australia, for example, your internet service provider legally for 5 years must store all of your metadata, which includes browsing history, everything for 5 years. They legally have to do this. What are they doing with that data? What are they doing with that information? If you look at countries like the UK, it's an island. Every single fiber optic cable underwater is being tapped, and that information is being stored. So it's just, and some of this data goes to government agencies, some of this data goes to corporations. So there has been improvements in internet security. Of course, you had the invention of HTTPS, which really opened the floodgates for the dot-com boom and e-commerce because people could securely enter credit card details and things like this. However, of course, stuff still gets leaked. 10 years ago, if you mentioned you were using a VPN, people would probably raise their eyebrows and think, what? Now it is the norm. But as Neurotic did allude to, your VPN, you're just trusting that VPN company with the data. And all that data is just being collected there. You're just trusting another centralized entity. So what anyone is doing, and hats off to the Tor project, which first made famous the onion routing technology. Think of it as a decentralized VPN. We have essentially forked that network and we are applying Web3 methods to make this a lot more decentralized, not just from a technical perspective, but also from a governance perspective. We do not want any single point of failures, be it a team member shutting down the network, be it certain servers going down and bringing down the network. This will be not just the largest onion network in the world, but it will be one of the largest networks in the world. It will be robust, it will be secure, and even more importantly, it's going to be so fast and the privacy will be done so seamlessly that it will not change the end user's browsing experience. If you look at people who's like get hacked, it's because they don't implement two-factor authentication because it's an inconvenience. If you look at like people who get hacked in all their accounts, it's because they use the same password, because using different passwords is an inconvenience. The end user experience for developers and users using the Anyone network is simple, and that and will promote mass adoption. And we do that through our hardware. We're doing that through our SDK so developers can easily deploy secure code. So I think that what we are doing here is simplifying that end user experience, which is key.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the problem that you're really tackling is so multifaceted and it touches on a lot of different parts of that privacy preserving methodology that folks probably aren't familiar with, myself included. When you think about using a VPN, probably the last thing that you're thinking about is that information getting stored on their servers, right? You're using it as a function of trying to either be private or you're trying to, do something in a different country, but you don't think about it from oh, this is actually exposing my metadata and other information to the person that's providing the VPN services. I'm so fascinated by the various components that are a part of the actual network. I feel like the SDKs the developers are building. Like I know that is we've been kind of talking offline. My day job company, we're looking at building on anyone with those SDKs because it's super super important. Can you talk through like the importance of those various components in the overall ecosystem, whether it be the hardware, sort of the SDKs the developers are building on, and what consumers will ultimately interface with when they're using a product that's built on anyway?
Yeah, that's a really good question because as you said, it is so multifaceted. Right now we're expanding the supply side and the demand side. Sometimes, as with the hardware, those things merge together. So I can um it's a period of excitement that also maybe creates a little period of confusion. I guess going through the sort of components of this, we'll start with the supply side because that is kind of what we built out first. We have this massive onion routing DePIN where anyone can run our client either on their own hardware or on a virtual server or on hardware that we create. We don't try and sort of gatekeep that supply side. People can run it pretty much on anything because the um, requirements for hardware are so low. Really, people are contributing their bandwidth in whichever way they choose. And so we have this community already. We have over 4,000 active nodes right now, just on the back of our community, running this software that routes other people's traffic in this onion routing circuit, and then eventually out to the destination website. That's sort of the base. That's what we call, when we talk about the privacy layer, we're really talking about this massive set of nodes that all interface with each other and route users' traffic. In terms of then building on top of it and using it, we kind of offer two distinct paths. The first one is, or actually three, should I say. The first one is the typical sort of VPN approach, and we've rolled out sort of beta versions of these simple scripts that people can run to automatically configure their device traffic to go through the network. Those will sort of mature and refine themselves into traditional point and click VPN apps. So if you just want to connect to this network, use this decentralized VPN that's more secure than any VPN, you have a way to do so. We actually onboarded Benjamin Earhart, who built out ORBot for Tor, which is the most popular Android app that uses Tor, and he's building equivalent sort of tech for us, so mobiles, desktops. If you're a regular user, you can use that. Maybe the more interesting way of interfacing with this network is the SDK. And that's where, as a developer, if you're either building out something new or modifying existing software in just a few lines of code, you can get your service to spin up a client in the background and then forward all the application traffic through the circuit. And so the idea there is, if you're using, let's say a Bitcoin wallet that's configured to use this network, if you're using an email client, even a Telegram client or a messenger that's configured to use this network, you have this privacy by default without really having to turn anything on. And I think that second avenue is one we're just at the cusp of beginning to explore. And maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later on. And then the third way of interacting with the network is one we have very much pushed ourselves as a team, is actually through our hardware. I mentioned earlier that people can buy this device from us to run and be a node in the network. But this hardware device also will work as a router and forward your home traffic through it. So people are kind of protected themselves as well. Again, all devices can share this one hardware instead of each of them running a VPN or running something themselves. So those are, I guess, the three main ways of using it, and all the main components of the ecosystem.
I'm just so passionate about anyone, but just to like add to Neurotic's points there, everything he said there, this is being designed in a way that anyone can utilize the network. It is tailored for developers. It is tailored for more sort of technical DePIN node operators who want to run virtual machines, or if you want to just plug in the hardware, it's plug and play. Of course, if you don't want to use the hardware, which is a node and a router, there's SDKs. People can just connect to the network for free and just download an application, and boom, you're connected. So anyone can use it. What I like about DPIN personally is, you can earn tokens by like learning how to spin up nodes and experimenting, and there's airdrops and there's things like this. But at the same time, not everyone is technical. So anyone tailors to non-technical people as well with the plug and play hardware. And if you want mass adoption, and that is what we are gearing up for, and we will achieve it, you need to make this consumer friendly. And also, you know, the beauty of anyone is it doesn't matter. It's not, yes, we are on Ethereum network, but every device uses the internet. So every device should be routed and will be compatible to go through this network. We want people routing. If you look at your home network at the minute, you probably have a laptop, a smart TV, and maybe even like, camera, CCTV, this and that. All this goes over the internet. This can be routed through the Anyone network seamlessly through the hardware. Encrypt everything by default. Encryption is not a crime. Privacy is not a crime. This is why people have locks on their doors and close their blinds. And some people go to me, oh, why do you care so much about privacy? Like, why should I matter? And I go, okay, let me look at your social media DMs. Give me your password. Let me look at your emails. Let me look at your web browsing history. And then they change their tone. So this is about our basic rights. And it's not just for technical people. It's not just for developers. It is for everyone. And most importantly, anyone.
Yeah, I think what you said was so important. And I said it at the onset that you are, in my opinion, building probably the most important DePIN, and I certainly mean it, because when what a lot of folks are maybe unaware of is that the behavior that's going on behind the scenes when you do a seemingly innocuous search on Google is, well, you've got your ISP storing that data, you've got your telco provider storing that data, you've got all these intermediaries. And so the importance for privacy, like you said, we've got doors on our locks for a reason. We need that on the internet as well. One of the questions I had specifically with respect to the physical hardware side is when you talked a little bit about at the beginning how with a lot of the VPN products, you're sort of just shifting the bottleneck from, what would have ran through some, like ISP server to maybe one that's being ran by the VPN host. How does that differentiate when you're looking at kind of this peer-to-peer network of nodes that are relaying traffic? And maybe this is a little bit in the technical weeds, but if I'm using like Proton VPN, for example, I go on and I can see the IP address of some what I presume is like the server that would provide the routing services. How does that work in a decentralized network? And then on the hardware side, like is it something that like each hardware has its own kind of IP address that users would connect to? Is that something you're able to talk through a little bit just for the technical oriented folks who are curious?
Love it. Great question. And yes, I'll dive in. I'll go technical, but I'll try to make it in a way that non-technical listeners can hopefully understand. Yes, so a VPN, how this works is you will log into your laptop, you will click connect to the VPN, and you will pick out one of their servers, which is located in a country. This will then create an encrypted tunnel from your laptop. It goes like and through your home router to that server. And then that's where your IP is shown as, and all your traffic just goes through that server. How the anyone network works. And security, there is not just one magic pill. You need to have a layered approach to it. That's sort of where the term onion comes from. You need to have a layered approach to your security. Like, don't just like, we are covering internet security, but like, you need antivirus software. You need to be careful with your OPSEC, things like this. The way that anyone sort of backbone works is there's three nodes that your traffic goes through, which are called like hops, you could call them. The first is the relay. They're called relay nodes as well. So it creates a VPN from your computer to the first node. Then that node creates a VPN to the next node, and then that node creates a VPN to the next node. Every time it does that, it randomizes the source IP address and each hop, and it goes through hops that are operated in different countries and by different people. So it randomizes it all. Then, if you want to stay within any one network, you can do that. Or if you want to go to like google.com, the way the traffic flow would work is you would go through the first hop, a VPN circuit, changes the source IP address, goes to the next hop, changes the source IP address, goes to the next node, which is called an exit node, and then it goes out to google.com. So that is traffic flow and it randomizes your IP. Now, the standards that build these VPNs this is the same technology that VPNs use. It's called AES 256 encryption. These are industry standards that have proper RFCs that are peer reviewed and fully open source. We are not making our own encryption standard because you just don't do that. It's like telling a chef not to use salt and pepper. So hats off to all the security engineers around the world and academics who work hard to build such robust protocols like this. This is the same standards that governments, militaries, and banks use. So that is sort of the way the traffic flow works, and then it's the exit nodes. Now, the exit nodes are run by volunteers and organizations all around the world, and it's diversified and decentralized. So that is sort of the way that the traffic flow works. If that, hopefully that made sense. This is why I sort of miss working in an office, because there's nothing more than I would love to do right now than get on a whiteboard and start drawing all this out. I miss the good old whiteboard sessions. Hopefully that made sense. If you have any questions, fire away.
Yeah, no, that made total sense, and it was a very thorough and comprehensive explanation. I appreciate that. Maybe during this time, I can I can throw up a little diagram to exactly show folks what that would look like. But in a world where the exit nodes, excuse me, where you have a project that's built on the anyone protocol, and you're maybe not going to Google, for example, what does that traffic flow look like? I mean, in that case, does it not necessarily need an exit node because presumably that client software is being serviced through the anyone protocol? Am I on with that? Am I totally off base? Can you help me understand that part of it a little bit further?
Brilliant question, right? So and again, this is we are realistic. People need to go on Amazon.com. They need to go on Netflix.com. They're going to go on the clear web. So anyone, you have the ability to go on to the clear web, and then you can, if you are a developer or if you are hosting servers, you can convert these to onion services. And what this means is the you never leave the exit node. So let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say a developer here is listening and they want to build a GitHub private project. They could have their servers hosted on normal web servers. They install the Anyone SDK binary, and then they can convert them to onion services, and then the traffic flow they would never leave the network. Think of it like an encrypted cloud. So, but you can do both. So if you don't actually want to host your servers on the clear web, you can convert them. Tor made this famous, and it's a bad example, but it's a famous example. You had Silk Road, which was a marketplace where people were buying and selling, drugs and stuff. And I'm not going to go into that, but that was hosted on sort of within their network. Now, they did traditionally call that the dark web. I do not like this term, the dark web. I believe personally that the term dark web is sort of like a propaganda tool to discourage people to encrypt their traffic. That is not, and with this, and this is why I love anyone's branding, anyone's rebrand, and anyone's marketing, because we're sort of cleaning up that image again. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but privacy and encryption is not a crime. It is your right to keep your data confidential, but more, like, almost as importantly, security is important. If you're a developer listening on this call and you're writing applications that are pushing sensitive information and it's going over the clear web, that can be a vulnerability. I know people and to implement security standards into your applications, it can be expensive, it can be difficult. A lot of people just sort of rush that. But with anyone, we empower developers to build and deploy secure apps in a way that's very easy to do, so they can focus on the actual work and we take care of the security and privacy. So not only do we make that developer experience easier and empower teams to work quicker and be faster and more agile, we also can instill that level of trust and confidence for the end consumer that utilizes that application. And our node growth at the minute is going absolutely parabolic. We will be seeing, you will see lightning speeds for your application calls. And again, the end user experience will not be impacted by this extra layer of encryption, security, and privacy.
We certainly love to hear about the parabolic growth happening on the network. And I also, as an outside observer, really do appreciate the intentionality behind cleaning up some of those negative connotations that are generally associated with these privacy and security tools. You're right. The dark web by default sounds like it's for nefarious purposes, but the reality is these are just ways to enhance our OPSEC as we're doing what seems like, again, standard day operations with going and doing a cursory search to find information that you're looking for, which is really important. But you said something though, which triggered a question I have. And for folks that have been involved with kind of the Anyone community or the project for a while, you did have a transition from kind of your branding or migration from a tour to Anyone. Is that something you're able to talk about for people that are maybe catching up to speed with what's been going on within the community? Just kind of talk through that a little bit at a high level, and give some updates for folks who maybe have questions around what that transition process was for and kind of where you're at now.
Sure. And that transition of name from Ator to anyone very much reflects the sort of uh, pivot we made. So initially, Ator actually launched as the sort of incentive layer for the Tor network, which of course has existed for 10 to 20 years, but arguably hasn't really scaled on the supply side much at all over the last 10. And so we initially had this focus. We built out the incentives and actually grew the capacity of the Tor network by close to 30% in just 2 months of testnet time. And so really we kind of proved our initial thesis, right? If you bring in incentives for people to run these relays, people will run more. And unfortunately, sort of that sudden growth and recognition sort of led to the Tor project reversing their stance on us. And in the end, we parted ways. And so what's changed from Ator to anyone is instead of building directly on the Tor network, we're taking that core onion routing technology and have the freedom to apply it ourselves in our own network in ways that's more decentralized, more censorship resistant, but also more configurable, more customizable, and arguably more suited to this vision we had to make this network the reality and the default for every user on the internet. So with that transition, with that shift to our own network, came this shift in branding away from Ator and towards this sort of dictionary word, something a little mainstream. Um, our branding has also kind of shifted towards this light theme as we try and redefine the traditional stereotypes associated to privacy. And overall, I think people really like, well, at least us as a team really like this new direction we've taken, and it puts us in a stead to really gain some universal recognition outside of purely the Web3 space and towards something a little more global and a little more accessible.
Well, I was just gonna say, is an onlooker who's trying to put both my kind of anyone hat, if you will, or Web 2 hat and my Web 3. I think you're certainly hitting the nail on the head with respect to pulling off that mission. I was just gonna give you some positive praise there, but DMB Wizard, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for that. The praise is great, and thanks for the support. It's awesome to hear. And with this pivot, the Tour project is a charity or it's a non-profit. I think like with the any like we're more sort of the team's more commercially savvy, right? And a lot of and hats off to all the builders and the node operators. They just, the tour node operators, and I had a lot of tour nodes. It's all run by volunteers who are not paid. And it's hard to scale a network like that. And, a lot of developers and stuff, if you can look and you can see a lot of people sort of started trying to build applications in Tor and they've almost abandoned them. And it might have been because of like, I don't know this, but like maybe lack of funding and this and that. And we were trying to reignite that passion and that flame. So by incentivizing people to run nodes, you really, yes, don't get me wrong, the majority of our community, our activists really care about the cause and the passion, but there's also people who want to earn tokens. But we're really igniting that spark, and we're actually seeing an influx of developers who sort of may have given up on their previous projects and stuff, but now want to come and build on anyone because they'll get that support. So I suspect and envision that there's going to be hackathons, there'll be grants, there'll be incentives for developers to build. So I would hopefully, if anyone here, and I know Tyler yourself, you mentioned about wanting to incorporate anyone into your tech stack. I hope that any developers that did have ideas and really are genuine people to get in touch with the team and let's just work work together to make your dreams and your visions a reality, for the good of fighting censorship and promoting privacy.
I think that's an empowering mission that you call all developers to want to join. I know we're really excited just for we've got a call actually scheduled tomorrow, ironically, for building anyone into Freedom, because that was exactly what we've been wanting to kind of develop from the very get-go, which was this relay network that preserves privacy and censorship resistance. And it's amazing that because you're able to create so much network effect and have all these various components sort of ready set for developers and builders, you can actually bring those value props directly into your project, which is so cool and important, really. A couple other transition processes I'm curious about, I believe you're in the middle of a token migration. And then also with that transition from HOR to anyone with previous hardware that existed, is that hardware going to be able to work within the new network? Are you able to talk through other transition details that people might need to be aware of that, if you had a node that was running previously, will that still work? Token stuff.
Yes, definitely. And I think, all things being considered, not too much has changed, and certainly nothing has suddenly gone off the cliff and is no longer compatible. So hardware, even those, that first 1,000 that was sold last December, that's transitioned over very nicely to the to receiving the anyone token for rewards. All of that is kind of switched over in the background. As a user, if you still hold the HOR token, it's as simple as going to the migration page. It's prominent on our website, anyone.io. The link to that, going and approving those terms, and burning HOR to receive the anyone token, and everything else pretty much follows from there. So all in all, it has been fairly smooth. Hardware still works. Um, the network actually is has been growing since February anyway, so that has sort of straddled the A-Tour anyone. And yeah, now it's sort of looking forward and growing out this ecosystem.
And just to add to Neurotic's comments there, and I'm not an accountant or tax expert, but I believe that the token burning process is a non-taxable event, at least in the US anyway. I believe a third party research team did analysis, and that's in the public record. But that's yeah, just you burn your tokens, and then you receive the anyone tokens. It's a very smooth and straightforward event, but it changed nothing from the hardware perspective or the end user perspective. So yeah, just be careful. Neurotic did drop, just follow anyone.io, and just only follow official comms and links. Be careful,
Yeah.
guys. People want your tokens. Do not give them up.
It is an unfortunate reality of the space, and we will certainly be linking all the official channels down below so folks can hopefully go to the right ones without too much friction there. You mentioned going, like what's ahead. I'm curious, what are kind of the next steps for the project with respect to either, new advancements at the software layer, at the hardware layer? I know you've got a lot on the roadmap coming out with, you mentioned your actual router app, some of these SDKs that you've been touching on. What else is next for the project that people can get excited about?
Great question. So we've just rolled out the initial incentives for running a relay. So far, people have kind of done it from their own goodwill, or they receive some sporadic airdrops and rewards. Now, these incentives are formalized finally. People can go on the dashboard, redeem their rewards from our ROE distribution layer, and then be eligible to receive those rewards as mainnet anyone tokens. And we're distributing actually at a reduced rate to get started, but it's enough to maintain the supply side. And as DNB alluded to earlier, our network has, close to or over 4,000 active relays. The network is blazingly fast um, in this sort of nascent stage. What we're going to transition to and focus on now is actually bringing users onto this network. And so the next big thing to come out is the first few iterations of our SDK that will include iOS, Android, and TypeScript or NPM, which off the bat opens up a great number of apps to go and incorporate this routing in just a few lines of code. And generally, the direction we're going in is actually bringing in all of our extensive partners within the Web3 space and making those partnerships sort of real. Typically, Web3 partnerships are very much in name or in marketing. And we're here to bring in routing through the Anyone network into these products, especially DePIN products, and kind of grew out those initial case studies and hopefully inspire the next generation of privacy-centric developers. Sort of parallel to this SDK rollout, we are looking at co-sponsoring some hackathons, some more details about that to follow, and also building out some tech ourselves using this SDK, which maybe we can talk about a bit later. But it's very much going to transition over to this focus on building and growing out those first case study apps.
I love it. I love it. DNB Wizard, did you have anything else you wanted to just tack on to that?
Yeah, look, we are seeing more and more users starting to utilize and onboard the network, which is brilliant to see. I would encourage everyone to follow the official documentation. There's lots of tutorials up. Get on the network, enjoy the experience. It is free to use, the software client, and it is lightning fast. We have had people testing it all around the world. Daniel from DePIN Hub, I think was testing it. Where was he? For some in the Middle East. It's a really good experience. The hackathons, that to me, that's so exciting. Just empowering and helping developers is great. If you don't have hardware yet, there will be more hardware to look forward to. And yes, just accumulate those rewards. And of course, there's going to be a DAO. There's going to be governance. This is a community driven thing. Yes, there is the team, but community is king. Any project or and look, I'm going to go on a bit of a salty rant here, but it's because I've been in this industry for too long. I have seen too many projects hit success or raise money. They think they're gods and then they just don't deliver and they take their community for granted. Anyone does not do that. It is community focused and community driven, and the DAO and governance mechanism will sort of be the proof in the pudding there. So I would encourage everyone to get involved in the community, join the Telegram, join the Discord, learn, educate, teach, better yourself, get involved. There will be opportunities. There's going to be cool projects spinning up. It's going to be a whole ecosystem. It is incredibly exciting to see. I can't wait to see some of the apps that people will deploy. Decentralized exchanges within the network, GitHub forks. People might make apps that allow you to change your IP address to watch streaming services in different places. People could make apps to think about this. You have a router, you have the anyone device at the edge of your network. People might incorporate antivirus software on it, advanced firewall software on it, all of this. So all these opportunities exist for developers to build on. But at the same time, I will tell people to be cautious because we don't want people coming in and saying, "Oh, we're building on anyone," just to get our hype, because the anyone community will support people and they're amazing, and we're very protective of people who try to take advantage of that. There's just so many things to look forward to. I could rant on about it for days, but I'm conscious of the time.
No, I mean, I think that anybody that's listening is certainly getting excited about all the prospects of what will be built on the network. Like I said, I know the first time that I heard about it, I said, this is absolutely 110% the exact solution that we've been in search for and envisioning, wanting to have built, thinking about, oh man, is this something we're going to have to try and build our own? The answer is no, because anyone is here for it. I know we're about out of time, but I want to ask one fun question just to end things on an interesting or lighter note. But if Satoshi is still around, do you think that Satoshi will be a anyone user and would he build projects on the anyone platform?
That is an interesting one. I mean, I think I speak for a lot of people in this industry, to hope that Satoshi never does reveal himself if he is still around, and in keeping with that goal, yes, please do use anyone to do that.
I think that's great. I think that's great. Well, Neurotic and DNB Wizard, I really appreciate you guys coming on, taking the chance to chat about what you're building. I've said it once or twice now, but I'll reiterate. I think it's probably the most important DePIN project that exists today. And privacy is absolutely a fundamental human right, and I think we're losing that, unfortunately, as the days go by, and as these larger tech companies and ISPs and whatnot get more and more power. So I'm super excited about everything that you have coming down the pike. we'll definitely be able to link all of that information down below for people to go and get involved with the community, whether that's at the Discord, the documentation. But we want to just say thank you so much for coming on, getting a chance to chat about what you're building. I'm really excited for what the future holds. And so just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Really, really appreciate this. It was a very nice chat. Hopefully we can have many more.
Absolutely. You guys are always welcome back on. We really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you for letting us have the opportunity to speak. It was an absolute pleasure. And yeah, keep up all the good work that you guys do. And yeah, let's carry on the mission. And we will see, I'll see you guys at $2 billion market cap. Anyone is going to be a major success.
I couldn't agree more. We'll absolutely see everyone there. Perfect. Well, with that being said, we're going to wrap it up here, everybody. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next podcast. Cheers.